Yo, check it out. What the hell is that? A toolbox. Laughter erupted in the break room, bouncing off the pale gray walls like bullets. Alan Prescott, 78 years old, hair silver as snow and shoulders still squared with quiet dignity, placed his metal lunchbox on the laminate table without saying a word. It's like from the 1920s or something. Another voice chimed in. Derek, 26. Cocky, full of protein shakes and TikTok smirks. What's in there, Mr. Prescott? Coal and a flask of whiskey. More laughter. Alan didn't flinch. He opened the latch with the same steady hands that had built bridges, restored old lighthouses, and once carried a fallen soldier through enemy fire. Inside the lunchbox was a simple meal: 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, a thermos filled with black coffee, and an apple with a small bruise on one side. He removed one sandwich carefully, like a ritual. He placed it on a napkin. Oh, damn. He's serious, Derek said. This is peak boomer behavior right here. You ever heard of Uber Eats? Alan looked up, his voice gravelly but calm. My wife used to pack this lunchbox every morning. She passed away 3 years ago. I pack it the same way she used to. For a second, the room fell silent. Just a second. Then someone coughed. Someone else chuckled. And the moment of humanity passed like a breeze through a locked window. That was Monday. By Wednesday, the teasing had escalated. Derek snapped a photo of the lunchbox and posted it online with the caption, "Live footage of the Great Depression survivors' meal." The post got traction more than expected. Likes, shares, comments both mocking and oddly curious. By Friday, someone from Channel 7 News showed up. "Excuse me, sir, the you." Alan squinted under the fluorescence as the reporter stepped closer. She was young, couldn't be more than 25, with a bright red blazer and a clipboard she clutched like a life raft. "I'm Rachel Lynn from Channel 7, she continued. "You're Mr. Alan Prescott, right?" Alan nodded slowly. "I am. What's this about?" Rachel offered a smile that was meant to be disarming. "It's about your lunchbox, sir. The internet's gone wild over it." Alan furrowed his brows. "Gone wild over what?" "A sandwich and coffee." Rachel gestured to her cameraman, who was already adjusting his lens. "Well, yes. But more than that. The story behind it. The tradition. People are calling it nostalgic, humbling, real." Derek peeked his head around the corner. "Told you, man. You're viral now. Grandpa Lunchbox." He grinned like he'd created a meme, not a moment. Alan exhaled slowly. "I'm not interested in any circus. This isn't a spectacle." Rachel hesitated. "I understand, but would you be willing to talk to us? Just for a few minutes? I think it would mean a lot to people." Alan looked down at his hands. His knuckles were knotted, veins thick, hands stained with decades of honest work. He didn't understand social media. He didn't care for attention. But if telling the story meant honoring Martha, maybe it was worth it. He nodded. "All right, but only if I can sit down. I don't stand long these days." They sat up quickly. Rachel took a seat across from him, while the break room filled with curious employees pretending not to watch. The red light on the camera blinked on. "Mr. Prescott," Rachel began, "can you tell us the story behind the lunchbox?" Alan placed it on the table. "This box is older than most people in this building." "Got it. The year I came back from Korea. I was 24. My old man gave it to me and said, 'Start fresh. Carry your work with pride.'" Rachel leaned forward. "And the meal inside?" Alan smiled faintly. "That's Martha. She packed this for me every day for 52 years. PB and J on apple and coffee. Even after I retired. Said habits keep a man alive. After she passed, I kept it going. Felt like if I stopped, I'd lose her all over again." The room was silent. No giggles, no whispers. Only the whir of the camera and the low hum of the vending machine. Rachel's voice softened. "That's beautiful. And very touching. Did you know your stories inspired thousands online already?" Alan shook his head. "I didn't tell it to inspire anyone. I just didn't want to forget." Rachel nodded, a bit misty-eyed. Well, you've reminded a lot of people of what matters. Thank you for sharing it. The interview wrapped. Alan stood slowly, his back stiff but straight. As the news crew packed up, Derek approached, scratching the back of his neck. Hey, Mr. Prescott, he said awkwardly. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make fun of you like that. I didn't know about your wife. I was just being stupid. Alan regarded him. Then, after a long pause, he offered a small nod. You're young. That means you've got time to grow. Derek blinked. Right. Yeah, thanks. That weekend, the segment aired. By Sunday night, Alan's story was trending nationwide, but he didn't see it. He didn't have a smartphone or Facebook or TikTok. He just packed his lunchbox on Monday morning, the same way he always had. Monday came with fog rolling low over the town. Alan pulled on his coat brown wool, a bit frayed at the cuffs, and stepped onto the porch. He clutched the lunchbox with both hands, fingers slightly trembling from the cold. Not arthritis, nerves. For the first time in years, Alan Prescott felt, watched, not in a threatening way, but in the way trees notice the wind. He walked toward the bus stop, and a man in a red SUV slowed down to wave. Hey, you're the guy from TV. My dad used to carry the same box. Alan nodded stiffly and kept walking. He didn't know what to say to strangers. He preferred quiet. The world was too loud now, always buzzing with likes, hashtags, and invisible followers. At work, things were different. People held the door open. Someone had cleaned the break room microwave. Derek didn't crack a single joke, and when Alan opened his lunchbox at noon, he noticed a fresh napkin folded beside his sandwich. Neatly printed with 3 words in black marker, she'd be proud. He didn't cry. Not then. But he folded that napkin and tucked it into his breast pocket like a medal of honor. Later that afternoon, a manager named Carla approached him in the hallway. Carla rarely spoke more than good morning or watch your step, but today, her tone was gentler. Mr. Prescott, I got a call from the station this morning. Your story's being syndicated. People are requesting interviews. Book publishers too. Alan blinked. Book publishers. For what? Your story, your life. They want to turn it into a book or a short film, maybe even Netflix. Alan scoffed. They want a movie about a sandwich, Carla smiled. Not the sandwich, sir. The soul behind it. That night, Alan sat alone at his kitchen table. The same table where he and Martha had played gin rummy every Thursday night. He stared at the lunchbox and whispered, What would you think of all this, Mar? Silence answered, then a knock. He opened the door to find a young woman in scrubs holding a casserole dish. She looked nervous. I saw you on TV, she said. My grandfather passed last year. He used to bring a box, just like yours. I made this for you. Chicken and rice. Hope that's okay. Alan stared at her. No one had brought him a meal since the funeral. Come in, he said softly. Tell me about your granddad. They sat at the table for 2 hours. The next day, letters began arriving, dozens. By the end of the week, hundreds. Handwritten, typed, drawn in crayon. Children from schools sent pictures of lunchboxes. Veterans shared photos of meals in the trenches. Widows wrote about the smell of their husband's coffee, still lingering in the kitchen. And then came the call from the mayor's office. Mr. Prescott, the secretary said, we'd be honored if you'd join us at the community luncheon next week. We'd like to present you with the Heart of the City Award. Alan paused, for eating a sandwich, for reminding us that dignity doesn't make noise. It just keeps showing up. He agreed, reluctantly. On the day of the luncheon, Alan wore his only suit, black, well-pressed. Martha had sewn a tiny heart into the lining years ago, just above the pocket. To remind you you're never alone, she'd said. He carried the lunchbox on stage. As the applause rose, Alan stood at the podium. He cleared his throat. The room fell silent. I didn't come here to be clapped at, he began. I came because my wife made me lunch every day, and now I make it for her. I don't need a medal. I need people to remember her. A pause. I never planned to go viral. Hell, I still don't know what that means. But if it makes someone hug their spouse longer tonight, or call their dad, then it's worth every whisper and every laugh. He held up the lunchbox. This isn't old. This is solid, just like love should be. The room erupted. Even Derek, sitting in the back, wiped a tear from his eye. 3 days after the awards ceremony, Alan received a call from an unknown number in Los Angeles. He didn't know anyone in La. There was nothing he needed from Hollywood. Mr. Prescott, a young male voice, rang out, breathing a little fast like he was walking. My name is Theo Masters. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I saw your segment on Channel 7 and wow, I think there's something really beautiful here. Alan pinched the bridge of his nose. If you're looking for a viral moment, son, I think that ship's already sailed. Theo chuckled nervously. No, sir. I'm not looking for a meme. I'm looking for meaning. I'd like to fly out and talk to you. Maybe film a short piece. Nothing flashy. Just you, the box, the memories. Alan hesitated. The idea of someone poking cameras around his living room, his and Martha's living room, felt invasive. But something in the boy's voice felt honest, not hungry, just hopeful. Come out, Alan said at last. But don't expect red carpets. 2 days later, Theo showed up with a camera, a notepad, and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in weeks. He was only 27 but spoke with the reverence of someone older. They filmed for 2 hours. No lights, no makeup. Just Alan in his chair by the window, holding the lunchbox and telling stories about Martha, her laugh, the way she danced in the kitchen, how she always hummed the same off-key tune while cutting apples. When they finished, Theo sat there quietly, his recorder still rolling, even though the interview was done. Do you miss her every day? He asked gently. Alan looked out the window. The sun was setting, casting gold on the dying oak tree out front. No, he replied. I miss her every minute. Theo blinked hard, trying not to cry. Alan reached for his coffee. You can use that line. Put it in your film. And he did. A month later, the short documentary premiered online. The Lunchbox, A Love That Never Left. It had no flashy cuts, no sad music, just silence, and Alan's voice. Within 48 hours, it hit 5 million views. Teachers played it in classrooms. Therapists showed it to couples on the brink of divorce. Veterans passed it around on forums with captions like, "This is what honor looks like." Even Martha's old church called. They wanted to hold a screening, but Alan didn't watch it. I lived it, he told Carla when she asked, why would I need to replay it? Still, life changed. Local bakeries began offering lunchbox specials, PB&J, with coffee and an apple. $1 going to the Widow's Fund. A small bronze plaque appeared outside the factory where Alan worked, to the quiet man who reminded the world what love looks like at noon. And one morning, Derek walked into the break room with his own lunchbox. Metal, worn-looking, painted blue. He sat next to Alan and opened it. PB&J, he said. My mom used to make it for me before she passed. Figured I'd honor her too. Alan looked at him, long and slow, then nodded. Good sandwich, he said. Good memory, Derek replied. They ate in silence. For the first time in months, Alan didn't feel like he was eating alone. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when she arrived. Alan was sitting by the front window, tracing the rim of his coffee cup, when a light knock rattled the glass on the porch door. Not many people came to visit without calling first, and certainly not in weather like this. He shuffled to the door, joints aching, and opened it slowly. A young woman stood there, soaked to the bone, dark curls sticking to her forehead, a duffel bag hanging off one shoulder. She couldn't have been more than 22, her eyes green, wide, haunted, fixed on his. Are you Alan Prescott? She asked, breathless. I am. She hesitated, then extended a shaking hand. My name is Ellie Carter. The name meant nothing to him, but the way she looked at him, it was like she knew his face better than he knew his own. I saw the documentary, she said, voice soft. I think I might be your granddaughter. Alan blinked. Excuse me, she swallowed. Martha was my grandmother. My mother's name is Rachel Carter. I think she was Martha's daughter. I think she gave me up for adoption. Alan's body stiffened like a pillar of stone. He stepped back slightly. The air in the room shifted. That's not possible, he said. Martha and she never had children. We couldn't. We tried. Ellie reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph, sealed in a plastic sleeve. It was faded, crumpled at the corners. Alan took it with trembling hands. It was Martha, younger, in her 20s, maybe, smiling, holding a newborn wrapped in a pink blanket. On the back, in shaky cursive, Rachel, May 1963. My sunshine. He dropped into the chair behind him. His breathing turned shallow. She never told me, he whispered. She never. Why would she? Ellie sat on the floor beside him, legs crossed like a child at story time. Her voice was gentle. She was 19. My mom, Rachel, was adopted by a family in Oregon. She never knew her mother's name until recently. Then she found a journal. Martha's name was written in it. She found your story online, showed it to me. We pieced it together. Alan rubbed his eyes with the heels of his palms. His hands were shaking. She never said a word. Not once. She carried that alone. Ellie nodded. Maybe she thought you wouldn't want to know. Or maybe she wanted to protect you from the pain. He looked at the photo again. I always wondered why she looked so sad every Mother's Day. Silence settled like mist between them. I'm not here to demand anything, Ellie said. I saw the way you spoke about her, and I felt like I'd known you my whole life. Alan glanced at her. There was something in her face, something familiar in the curve of her chin, the way she clasped her hands when she was nervous. My God, he whispered. You have her hands. Ellie smiled, tears pooling. He reached out slowly, placed his palm over hers. His hand dwarfed hers, wrinkled and worn, but the connection was electric. I never thought I'd have family, he murmured. Never thought I'd sit here like this. Ellie squeezed his fingers. Maybe life just took the long way around. They sat for hours, talking, laughing, crying. He told her about the war, about Martha's apple pies, about the time she made a snowman in July just to make him smile. And Ellie told him about foster homes, about quiet birthdays, about how it felt to always be the puzzle piece that didn't fit. That night, Alan didn't sleep much. He sat at the kitchen table with the lunchbox in front of him. He opened it, looked at the sandwich, the apple, the thermos. Then he reached for a pen and wrote something on the inside of the lid. To Ellie, your grandmother's love was quiet, but it never stopped. The next morning, Alan did something he hadn't done in years. He made 2 sandwiches, 2 apples, 2 cups of black coffee. The lunchbox couldn't hold it all. So he tucked the second meal into a brown paper bag and scribbled E on it in thick black ink. Ellie waited by the door, wrapped in a coat that was too big for her. It was Martha's old winter coat. Alan had insisted she wear it. She would have wanted that, he said, on the bus ride to the factory. Ellie stared out the window, her breath fogging up the glass. Alan sat beside her, his hands folded neatly over the lunchbox. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. I know it's your routine. Alan glanced at her, so let me share it. When they arrived, heads turned. At first, no one said anything. A few guys nodded politely. Carla raised an eyebrow but smiled when Alan introduced Ellie as his granddaughter. Derek did a double take. Wait, what? You have a granddaughter? Since when? Since yesterday, Alan said simply. At noon, the break room buzzed with whispers. Alan and Ellie sat at the corner table. He opened the lunchbox with his usual care, then handed Ellie the brown bag. Thanks, Grandpa, she said, trying the word out for the first time. It felt awkward, but beautiful. Derek walked over, tray in hand. Mind if I join? Alan nodded. Plenty of room. For a moment, 3 generations of grief, growth, and understanding sat in silence, eating peanut butter and jelly like it was communion. Then Derek said, my mom used to hum while she cooked. Drove me nuts. Now, I kind of miss it. Ellie smiled. Martha used to hum too, off-key. Maybe that's a grandma thing, Derek said. Everyone chuckled. When the break bell rang, people clapped as Alan stood. Confused, he looked around. Carla stepped forward. Alan, we We put something together, she said. Hope you don't mind. From behind her, a group of workers wheeled in a small cart. On it was a brand new metal plaque mounted on wood. It read, "In honor of Alan Prescott, for showing us the beauty in the ordinary," and underneath, etched in smaller letters, "Legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you carry forward." Alan swallowed hard. "You didn't have to, we know," Carla said, "but we needed to." Someone handed him a Sharpie. "Would you do the honors?" they asked. He nodded, then turned to Ellie. "Come here." She stepped forward. Alan placed the Sharpie in her hand and whispered, "Your grandmother was the beginning, you're the continuation. Sign it." Her fingers trembled as she scrawled her name beneath the inscription. That evening, the plaque was mounted permanently in the break room, just above the microwave. But more important than the plaque was the shift that followed. People brought back their own lunchboxes, old ones, hand-me-downs, painted, dented, loved. Photos went up on the wall. Stories were shared over coffee. The break room became more than just a stop. It became a shrine to connection. And Ellie, she stayed. She found a job at the local library, started taking night classes. And every morning, Alan packed her lunch next to his own. 2 weeks later, it arrived. A plain white envelope, no return address. The handwriting on the front was delicate, almost shaky. Alan opened it slowly, sitting in his armchair, the lunchbox resting on the coffee table like always. Inside was a single page. "Dear Mr. Prescott, my name is Rachel Carter. I believe I'm your daughter. Martha was my birth mother. I was adopted at 3 weeks old. She never reached out, but she did leave a journal, and in it, she wrote about you. She said you were kind, steady, that you made her laugh without trying. She said you deserved peace. I never reached out because I didn't want to disrupt that peace. I had a good life, but when my daughter, Ellie, told me she'd found you, I wept. She said you welcomed her, that you gave her a sandwich and a coat and a place at the table. Thank you for that. Thank you for loving the daughter I raised, even before you knew she existed. If you're open to it, I would love to meet you." Alan sat frozen. He hadn't realized how tightly he'd been holding the paper until he noticed it trembling. "Dad." Ellie peeked around the corner. "Everything okay?" He looked up at her, her eyes green like Rachel's, calm like Martha's, held him steady. "You were right," he said. She tilted her head. "About what?" "Life just took the long way around." The next weekend, he met Rachel. They chose a park, neutral ground. The air was crisp, the kind that turns breath into little ghosts. Ellie came along, but stayed back on a bench, letting them have space. Rachel was in her 50s, with streaks of silver in her black hair and eyes that filled the gaps in Alan's soul. They sat under an old oak tree, neither of them speaking for a long time. Finally, she said, "I don't blame her. I hope you don't either." Alan shook his head. "No, I wish I'd known. I would have loved you both." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small tin. "Martha's journal. I thought you should have it." Alan opened it carefully. The pages were full of ink, fading in places. Some pages were tear-stained. One line jumped out. "He never asked me for anything but honesty. And still, I couldn't give him this." He closed the journal and held it against his chest. Rachel reached over, placing her hand on his. "I think we still have time," she whispered. Alan nodded. And from that day on, they made up for lost time, not with grand gestures, but with small, quiet moments. Rachel joined them for Sunday dinners. Ellie got a scholarship to a writing program and began working on a book about legacy, about silence, about peanut butter and jelly. Alan retired for real this time. He kept the lunchbox on the mantel, under a small framed photo of Martha. But every year, on the same date, he brought it out again and filled it like always. And one year, as Ellie sat across from him at the table, she said, "I've been thinking." He raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous words." She laughed. "I want to start a foundation for elderly folks who live alone. We'll call it the Lunchbox Project. We'll bring them food, but more than that, we'll bring them company." Alan nodded slowly. "That sounds like something," she'd be proud of. She already is, Ellie said, tapping her chest. The Lunchbox project launched within months. It started local, but the story had legs. Donations poured in from all over the country. Former Lunchbox kids, now grown adults, sent in photos, recipes, love letters to grandparents who'd passed. One day, Theo the filmmaker came back to visit. "I think we've got a new ending," he said, setting up his camera. "You ready?" Alan stood by the community center, wearing his best shirt and his worn-out shoes, the lunchbox in one hand and Ellie's hand in the other. He looked into the lens, smiled gently, and said, "Turns out, love doesn't spoil, not if you pack it right." The screen faded to black, and the world remembered him, not for his silence, not for the box, not even for the sandwich, but for the simple, radical act of showing up with love every single day.